Hello, everyone. Welcome to April 1st for our first Q&A discussion for CS 7641 Machine Learning. It's my great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Dr. Sergey Plis. For a graduate machine learning class, there are very few people who have careers that perfectly bridge this foundation of computational theory and transformative clinical neuroimaging applications, such as Dr. Plis has done. He's a professor of computer science and neuroscience at Georgia State University as he serves in the leadership team of the Tri-Institutional Center for Translational Research in Neuroimaging and Data Science. Whew, that's a big mouthful, but it's the Trend Center, where a unique collaboration that spans GSU, Emory University, and right here at Georgia Tech. He earned his master's and PhD in computer science from the University of New Mexico. His career is really a deep dive into extracting causal structures from one of the most complex and high dimensional with noisy data in existence, and that is our human brain. He's become a central pioneer in really applying deep residual networks, self supervised learning, casual discovery to multimodal brain data, as well as a tour of cutting edge methods pushing neuroscience forward. From developing deep learning methods to apply to neuroimaging and neurodegenerative data sets to multimodal data fusion methods to explore brain dynamics with as much data as publicly available, and even more. Beyond advancing the theoretical frontiers of how we model really mental illness and neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, he is deeply committed to accessible, deployment minded AI. He has transitioned his research into practical clinical tools and startups along the way, championing privacy serving browser based applications such as BrainChop and Brain to Print that brings really the state of the art MRI segmentation directly to practitioners without the need of a centralized compute. He also continues to push the boundaries of distributional collaboration with federated learning frameworks like NeuroSFL. But catch him on Fridays with YouTube postings leading a reading group with members of his lab and outside speakers for different soda machine learning and hot button topics called MLBBQ. So please give me a warm welcome to Dr. Sergey Plis.
Thank you, TJ, for such a nice introduction. But listening to you, I see that I'm zigzagging just to confuse everyone, and then that's how you get this long bios.
Yeah, so maybe we can start the conversation on your journey, maybe navigating both machine learning and neuroscience. How did you get into the neuroscience space? What led you more towards sort of the modeling based approaches and sort of the machine learning behind everything?
Well, modeling started early because my undergrad is computer-aided design and computer-aided modeling. But
Mhm.
it's a different kind of modeling, right? But when I started my grad school, my advisor offered me a few projects. And my advisor is a big name in neural networks from the previous neural networks time. And funnily enough, the first project that I picked and that I was interested in was on interictor epileptic spike detection from magnetoencephalography. And I like for professionals of modern days, there was only C and C++. There was no Torch, there was no PyTorch, and like Theano, like even wasn't there. And like, okay, you had to implement everything by hand, and that was 2001. And I was programming what we call right now 1D convolutional neural network. But it was a time delay neural network by Weibel in 1989. Yeah, it's rarely cited, but that's convolutional networks have a history and had very interesting results from practically raw MEG. And this is a lesson for everyone, did not publish it. They importantly did not publish the results, and but then I ended up with going into more magnetoencephalography, inverse problem solving at Los Alamos National Lab, and then fMRI MEG is such a new. It's MEG is like it's fantastic. It's my first love in modeling and signal processing, and it's like very interesting phenomena. But fMRI is more prevalent for research in the brain, and so I ended up in fMRI as well. But MEG, EEG, and I've tried different modalities and multimodal. So I don't know if that gives you. If that answers your question precisely, but I think it gives a hint towards.
Yeah, so there was some questions too about maybe this one from Naeem. Actually, Ewan. So really regarding the complexity across different brain and time scales, thinking about even MEG, EEG, fMRI that you've worked with, what are some of the reasons you would choose one modality or the other or fuse one when thinking about sort of the population dynamics? If we have all of this noise, why would we choose one modality over the other? Is it just quantity of data that we have? Is it just the way the expensiveness for some of these other modalities? Like, I guess why would we choose one over the other right now?
Well, Georgia Tech is an engineering school, right? So
Hmm.
the task of engineering is to do what's possible with what you have.
Hmm.
And it's not that simple that, oh, okay, this modality is the best, that's why you go with it. There are always trade-offs. And if you have a question, maybe modality A, say fMRI is the best for that question, but all your client or you have funding for is wearable EEG. And then
Yeah.
you have to solve the problem differently. But each modality gives you unique perspectives, unique strengths and weaknesses, and that's why multimodal is such a good approach. Even when you can collect, like you overfunded, you can collect all of the modalities. Still, say if you're collecting fMRI data, then fMRI can give you pretty good spatial resolution of where stuff is happening. But
Hmm.
temporal resolution is bad, and it is bad not because we cannot sample fast. Like now we have, when we started, we had about 2 seconds TR. Now we're at 0.7 seconds,
Hmm.
more or
Hmm.
less standard. But because the signal is smooth and sluggish, there is a temporal inverse problem of sort that you know where things happen, but you don't know when they happen. In magnetoencephalography and electroencephalography, let's not like I'll split them in a moment. The sampling rate is so fast that you know pretty much where when things happen, when as they happen, and you measuring electrical activity directly. In fMRI you're measuring indirectly metabolic rate and etc etc. It's like, okay, if it requires energy, that must be like that region must be active, and there are lots of
Yeah.
papers for connection. But in MEG and EEG it's okay, it's there as it happens. But okay, mostly both of them only measure cortical areas. Subcortical areas they don't get to. EEG is very noisy because of skull conductance, volume conductance, lots of problems. So solving inverse problem, finding where things are happening for EEG is I would not trust that at all. For MEG, I would trust the inverse problem, like to about the same resolution as fMRI, but only on the cortex. So it's best to look at all what you have. Well, there is also FNIRS that is cheaper than fMRI,
Yeah.
but also only on the surface you can collect surface signal. So it's best to be like, we have sense of touch, we have sense of smell, they have vision, we have auditory perception, and our brain somehow figures out the world from all of those modalities that are streaming in. So if we want to understand the phenomenon, it's better to use all of them. But say if you only about how fast people reacting to things, EEG probably would work because like P300 response, etc. You know that a person responded. Like there was an experiment once when they would flash images at 100 millisecond rate, or like super
Oh,
fast.
yep.
And from EEG, you could measure that people detected the target
Mhm.
from electroencephalography response. And electroencephalography is relatively like it's accessible technology. So yeah, that's.
So this does bring up an interesting point that we have so many, or we don't have so many samples, and these data sets are really just full of noise. Yet they're really hard, like small in samples for the actual events that might be happening. How do we separate the noise and know that we've succeeded when there really isn't ground truth, especially as we're still exploring different parts of the brain?
Uh,
But-
well,
Because really this comes up because a lot of the students have been dealing with noise in the data, and especially tabular data right now, is you can figure out great ways of doing that. But when you don't have ground truth, especially when you know that there is a high dimensionality here, how do you think about that, and where do you explore first when you don't have the ground truth?
yeah, so one, if you can think about machine learning as supervised approach, but machine learning rests on the foundation of pattern recognition field, right?
Hmm.
Signal processing. So one good way is to pre-process the data based on other data set. We call this now transfer learning, foundation models, and things like that. For example, for fMRI, in our center, we, by working with lots of small data sets on the course of decades, I would say. We sort of know the manifold, those low dimensional manifold of fMRI, which regions, or we call them intrinsic networks because they don't overlap, are
Hmm.
active. So it's kind of prior knowledge, but the prior knowledge comes from pattern recognition, from signal processing. We run group ICA analysis that is it's constrained to what we know, the kind of results that we're looking for, that we
Hmm.
know. Like we know which regions will be active, which intrinsic networks will be active. We just don't know by how much. So noise and small data sets. This is one approach. Pre-processing based on heavy priors from other data sets that are not the ones that you're working on. But there is another approach that we're using in brainchop.org. It's totally opposite. It's to go all in on randomness. It's called
Hmm.
domain randomization. It is practically the way I think about it, but people may not like my words, the description. It's a heavy overfitting on the model, the way humans are overfitted to see faces everywhere. Because faces
Hmm.
are so important
Hmm.
for us that we need to recognize them, that we see them in electrical outlets and everywhere. So what we do, we take a brain segmentation, and
Hmm.
then we completely garble it, like that it doesn't look to a human like a brain. It's only faint parts of the brain are there, and we train the model to recognize the brain in this bunch of noise. And once the model is able to recognize the brain in this noisy input, it can easily capture the brain in cleaner data. Like
Hmm.
the domain randomization is, we randomize everything, density, intensity, like everything, switched labels, and if the model is able to handle that, it can handle real data even without ever seeing any of the real data sets. So those kind of two approaches. One is heavy preprocessing based on your priors that can come from another data like foundational models, and arguably even the, like if we talk about now large models that scale and deep learning, training them on very noisy data is helpful because, as we noticed in our work and everyone noticed as well, the models generalize over non-systematic noise. If the noise is non-systematic, but truly random, the only way for a model to be correct is to capture the underlying model, whatever differential geometry or manifold, if you want, that is most stable behind that noise. And arguably, the foundation models, even LLMs, are trained like that. If you look at the training data of those raw models, they are not clean text. They are this data are really garbled data, tables formatted in weird way, and internet is a messy place, right? And yet they learn the structure from it. So that's to domain randomization.
Yeah, we had,
Uh-huh.
but no, that makes a lot of sense, especially when thinking about, I don't know, it just always reminds me of using weaker learners to find a global optima to make something a little more generalizable. Um,
Yeah,
we talk
this
about,
is inductive bias, as you're saying, right?
yes, yes,
So
yes,
it's kind
yes.
of heavy priors and inductive biases. Yes, yes.
Now
There
we
was
had
a,
a, oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, there was a question about those weaker um models, sort of
Mhm.
classical machine learning approaches. Are they still useful when we know that our heavy, large models are getting better and better?
I
And
mean, okay, so yeah, we could talk about that. I love to talk about this discussion because I even had someone at the beginning of last semester come to the class and say, why do we even need to know decision trees anymore? Aren't they worthless? That I can just find an example or have a code coded up for me and I can just use the heavier models anyway? Or why do we even know
well,
SVMs?
yeah, well, SVMs are beautiful.
Yes.
SVMs are beautiful, and like for aesthetic reasons, right? At least for aesthetic reasons, you need to know SVM. But decision trees, the person who asked that question, and you mentioned tabular data. Well, let them beat XGBoost first,
Mhm.
then with any like any of the neural network models. Decision trees and random forests are interpretable, powerful, and have provable guarantees. So if like like we know what to expect from them. The problem is not that classical machine learning models are not working, and that's for academia that's important, but for industry, it is. The problem or advantage is that for industry, you don't have to train people now with deep learning to understand as much as you would have needed to understand with classical machine learning to make it work. You can just throw data and computation, and a person is more like a shepherd of that process without understanding. Just like crank up more data, crank like you. It becomes much more easier in that sense. But you can still take every time. By the way, a suggestion: every time you have any problem, classification problem,
Yep.
throw logistic regression in the pool.
Yeah.
As like just because you'll be surprised. Those classical models are very robust. Another thing about like logistic regression and why would you use the classical models like decision trees is logistic regression predicts probabilities or tries to. So it is
Mhm.
well calibrated. And for trustworthy AI, we need as much reassurance as we can. If the model says, I'm 90% correct, we want it to be 90% correct. With neural networks, there is no correspondence. You have to take a lot, like the neural networks are overconfident. So
Mhm.
you cannot make your decision based on the neural network scores. And that matters for automation, because if the model says I'm 90% correct, this is the diagnosis, whatever it is, but it's actually only 50% correct. If you knew it's 50% sure rather than
Mhm.
90% sure, you would channel it to a human. So in order to split, in order to automate, you need to make a decision when to channel it to a human, because the model is highly likely wrong. Versus,
Yeah.
so you need to recalibrate that decision point. Automate, because this will be your error bar, or like within that confidence. Versus no, that like the models will be unreliable within that region. Another thing about decision trees in particular, and this is from practice. I was working with a hospital on predicting mortality, not mortality, but like survival,
Mm,
how long a person will survive, because for them it's a big quality of life and opportunity cost. Do you like put a person in hospital and sort of
mm,
treat them versus you retire them at home by pushing all of the machines at
yeah.
home? It's like so decision trees, doctors perfectly understand decision trees, and then
Hmm.
they know, okay, if this then that, and that's why this person appeared in this bucket versus that bucket. And that is again back to trustworthiness and liability and debugging why this decision was made, interpretability in the sense if something goes wrong, at least we could understand with decision trees. Decision forests are somehow there is a, and students, even with professors, those smarter, highly published professors usually are not good teachers, right? Because it becomes harder and harder to interpret what is happening in your head,
Mhm.
like at a very clear level. So the more powerful predictive models are less. I don't know if it's if I'm making it up, but it feels like they tend to be less explainable, or
Mhm.
a trick happens post hoc rationalization. I can explain anything about what I do, but it's like that's not why I did it, right?
Yeah.
It's like I
Maybe this does come to the flip side, though. You made me think of when we do use a fully black box method. Things a couple years ago, I think maybe 5 to 10, they had deep brain stimulation with epilepsy patients. And they found hitting a very specific spot, training that over and over again, they found a reduction in epilepsy episodes as they give this deep brain stimulation. This was out of a black box, though. And one thing that we talk about in a lot of our models is drift. Do you know if these models are still succeeding in practice? Because that was definitely an application where people got funding. They ended up going through FDA process. It was a completely black box model and didn't have a lot of explainability.
Oh, you are you talking about these implants? Uh, they are
Yes, and
used in
they,
practice. They are
yeah,
used in
like,
practice, kind of like noise canceling earphones, but for epilepsy. When the
mhm,
seizures start happening, this is my also not understanding, lay understanding of how
yeah,
they work, but I don't think there's much machine learning there. Maybe in some methods there is, but all you need, I think it's more signal processing than anything. It's catching this onset is machine learning, right? Predicting or when to start counter signals, and yeah, but drift. Ah,
yeah. I don't know if like you've seen that with any of the brain data over the years of like maybe collections spanned one way in the early aughts. Maybe they were different nowadays. I know it's just the signal to noise and improvements have happened with the measurement tools and different things of that nature. But I don't know. I always think about drift with fMRI and if there is like some fundamental shift with that, or
Well,
if we have.
you know about this phenomenon in statistics that results tend to dwindle with time as the experiments repeat. Like
Mhm.
the initial paper reports high significance, and then when people
Like kind of
uh,
slopes
with
down.
years, yeah. But this question makes me think about plasticity of our brain.
Mhm.
You know, neurofeedback, right? When for example, the task not announced to the subject is to generate a grating pattern on their visual cortex as detected by fMRI or as detected by MEG or something. And the subjects don't know. They only see that is a segue to your reinforcement learning session. All they see is the money bar, and when the bar is the money they're gonna get after goes up, they like, okay, well then I'm doing something right. And many subjects don't. don't do anything, and they see this bar, they're in the measurement machine, but they don't know the task. They're just like they're thinking, and I don't know, can you randomly generate any pattern on your visual cortex? We don't control that, but people do that. Some people learn to do that, and they don't even know what they're doing. The money goes up, they get the money, and when they're asked what, and the measurement says yes, they generate grading on their pattern, like just stripes on their visual cortex. When they asked, they can't explain what they're doing. But in my own experience, because the brain is very plastic, we have something called accelerated learning, or TDCS,
Yes.
transcranial deep current stimulation, when you put a cathode and anode, or anode cathode, on one part of your body, and with the hope of changing the performance by either accelerating, by manipulating firing threshold of your neurons in that part of the cortex. And I worked with
Mhm.
that data. And what I noticed from people pre and post stimulation and everything, what I noticed that the hub structure of the nodes, this is my causal learning kind of hat.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's not that in causal learning, we need to be able to intervene on nodes and control, then we can establish causality. If A
Mhm.
causes B versus B causes A, if I intervene on A, the result will be different. But what happened with those brains that I looked at, the whole hub structure just shifted. Because the brain is so plastic, it
Yeah.
rebuilt itself. So back to your epilepsy device and
Mhm.
drift. It's a co-training thing. It's not that the machine learning
Yeah.
model, it could be the brain could adapt to it, and depending either avoid or adapt to the drift and not drifts like this. I don't know. It's a little bit exploratory conversation, so I don't know exact answer, but that's
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. No, changing topics here. I'm just looking at the time, wanted to make sure I get a breadth of questions here. We have one, just looking at section 5. Kyle asked, looking at your MLBBQ sessions, you mentioned things like double descent and time test computation. For those of us trying to keep up with how fast things change, is there a specific rule or assumption in ML right now that you think is actually wrong or about to be replaced?
mm.
Very opinion-baited one. So if we can move on to a different one if you don't want to ruffle any feathers.
uh, Yes, I don't know. People are criticizing this already, but they're not used to the scaling laws. I think is not even though they work, but they're not a feasible idea. But we have
Mhm.
obvious proof. You know, I don't know. Carpenter bee, a fly. This little organisms are smart, and they don't have they don't operate on scaling laws. So
Interesting.
in the sense that we can, and us ourselves, scaling laws only work. There was a recent paper. People are becoming to realize that scaling laws are unsustainable. We cannot, cover the Earth with one computer. Well, I mean, we can, but it's so inefficient when when we see that it can be done differently. I think we will flip back. Well, there is also, I'm throwing buzzwords there, but there's also hardware lottery. Why transformers are winning or have won for now is because they're and hardware and the incentives of Nvidia and companies like that, they
Yeah.
are well aligned. But recurrent models with feedbacks, going back to cybernetics and things, I think are underappreciated, and I think those kind of models will win in the end because they can do more with less. Right now, we're learning functions, and you know that neural networks are universal functions approximators.
Yep.
The recurrent models and models with feedback are learning computations. So
Yeah.
so when you learn computations and functions in the broad sense are isomorphic. but the function that models the computation, function is an unfolded computation. You need exponentially larger functions or larger parameter functions to model some simple computation that can just loop. For example, even counting stuff. There was a recent paper this year about looking at transformers and RNNs and comparing what they learn. And turns out transformer learns a rule for each length of the sequence. So it doesn't learn an algorithm. It like for each length, it's its own function, and that's highly inefficient. It works, but it's more like a unrolled. Like that's why it's so huge. That's yeah. So that's what I think. And I don't think it's controversial. It's just the business doesn't want, and especially people who make a lot of money on this, doesn't want to be. But people understand. So if you want a breakthrough, my bet is on those recurrent models, not necessarily recurrent neural networks. We need something better, but the models with feedback. And there was a question, or
Yeah, I think Anun, did you have a follow-up question to this? Maybe that was just putting hand up accidentally.
Mhm.
Well, this does give me sort of an inkling to ask a little bit more on the intersection of our brain and neural nets. I know many times when people start to think about neural nets, they're like, "Oh, this is just how our brain operates." I know it's a funny misconception. But is there biological relevance to neural nets in thinking about how to improve them? Are there research about that out there? I know it's kind of a computational issue, but just your thoughts on like biological relevancy to sort of what we're doing in machine learning.
Well, I, I maybe kind of radical position. I don't think we need to care about biology, like in a sense. But hear me
I
out.
love
Hear
that
me.
answer. No, that's
Yeah,
great.
hear me. So this is like we have three fields that are kind of have different approaches. We are interested as humans of how thinking works or how the
Hmm.
mind rather works. But there are three approaches that competing. One is neuroscience, where we're claiming, okay, well, we have mind in biology, let's study the cells,
Hmm.
and then we will understand the mind. There is cognitive science that says, well, philosophy, that's what we need. We need the highest principle of cognition, highest principles of thinking. And there is
Hmm.
machine learning that says, well, let's build it first, and then we'll understand it, right? And I think this higher level principles are important and what we should strive for. And we can learn about them from biology, from experimentation in machine learning, or maybe sitting in an ivory tower like in cognitive science as well. But I don't think we need to copy biology. The only thing for biology is maybe we can learn from it, but I doubt we should repeat it because evolution is messy. The substrate of the mind in evolution is completely different, and not because it's the most efficient, but it's just the most fit to the environment. So, as learning, but like in fruit fly, there's two
Hmm.
neurons in the antenna operate like detecting each other because like if one is vibrating the other is not vibrating because the magnetic field, like we don't know anything how the system works, the system
Yeah.
work, they're so messy, but they realize the same principles. So I'm scared of biology because of so many details. Our engineering, if you want to be full stack engineer, go all the way down to the binary code. Assembly is already high level language. And this is beautifully non-messy compared to biology. Biology is like way more complicated. And yes, we want to know how it works, but that's a different question.
Hmm.
I think there is a mesoscale of principles that we can learn from, and then we can port them away from biology as well, or back into biology for healthcare. To like I believe soon for older people we will have exoskeletons. Why not? And that will prolong active life by much. And
Hmm.
why can't we do the same for cognition? Oh, like vision, for example. We happily we have implants now,
Yeah.
thankfully, that and things like that. But for that, now when you're getting into vision, you need to understand how ganglia in your eye cooperate with the brain. We need to understand the code. For that, yes, let's understand biology so we can interface directly. And yeah, let's not get into brain in the vat topic here.
Yeah, maybe that kind of leads a little more into the clinical side of these questions. We had one from, let's see, let's do, I liked June. Dear Dr. Sergey Plis, you've worked on many ML tools clinically deployable, including in-browser MRI segmentation. What technical or institutional barriers have you found the hardest to overcome when moving research models from real-world clinical workflows or a scientific workflow?
Well, just to be honest, we haven't moved anything in real clinical workflow because of lots of hurdles and everything, and that's why we went, say, with zero shot, zero footprint deployment with Brain Chop. There are administrative hurdles for
Yeah.
good privacy reasons, but there's also culture, and there's also that's anywhere you're going to deploy automation, there will be a pushback from people who already are doing this job because of the fear
Mhm.
of being replaced. This is maybe not the biggest one because doctors are overworked and medical workers are overworked. They need help. They need automation. But privacy of patient data is
Mhm.
big, and that's why federated learning, this whole research where like we got into that because we early realized that it's impossible to just make all data public.
Mhm.
It's just, there are cases when it's just not feasible for various reasons, including privacy reasons. And how do we develop it's a trust model in a sense, from patient to with my data, say,
Mhm. Mhm.
to a researcher who has different incentives. How can I trust if I give you my data and say, I don't know, like some disease that affects maybe my career potentially if it gets resurfaced or something? Like, there are
Yeah.
so many questions. I think those are the like bigger questions. In general, patients are willing to do that. But think about the following: I'm thinking to start a movement, and I never do. But here's an opportunity with having all of your ears. Are your medical data, your medical
Mhm.
record, is belongs to you because your insurance paid for everything.
Mhm.
It's like technically you paid for all of the data, yet you don't own it, you don't have it, and it stays in data centers of hospitals and companies that serve those hospitals, and then they decide to repurpose it. Like there are companies that charge money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But on, say, for example, I have my driver's license, being a little physical here. And on my
Mhm.
driver's license, I have this little sign, a heart there, right? Which I'm
Mhm.
saying that my body is disposable. If I'm not there, you can use it for other things. So why don't we all make donation? When we die, in entire history, our medical record goes to the public domain, and then we can have
Wow.
a lot of biomedical data for research and for biomedical. This is a slightly off. It's not about deploying, but it will
Mhm.
help deployment as well because we will have models that are trained on real data and trained by researchers who don't just pay like we're paying money for I'm getting a little social political there. It's our data, and it doesn't get that is not, well, people donate their bodies for science as well,
Yes. Mhm.
but the medical history with all the medical MRIs and everything measured during your life, that would be a lot of help for researchers to build more reliable models and to test them on actual. The way research is done right now, we hire subjects, right? We
Hmm.
set up a research, and this is kind of not ecological. It's like constrained. But if you get actual clinical data from the hospitals for history,
Hmm.
I'm sure it will help progress and reliability of the models.
Yeah, I really like I mean, there's no way the insurance companies would allow that, but this would be a very interesting nonprofit idea, especially even at like a state level to grow.
Why wouldn't they? Because like if I mean, I'm donating my medical history, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's already
Yeah.
paid for, and I paid for it, and yeah. Well, anyways, I think it's
Yeah.
possible. It's just nobody. I mean, it'll take some effort to push the public opinion. But I'm eternal optimist. I'm sure people will be willing to do that.
Mhm. Okay, let's change topics a little bit, especially when thinking about sort of these ideas of universal data. I know we've sort of talked about this before, but we had a question from Brennan about do we believe some of these models that Jan LeCun is kind of propping up, the JEPA-based, world-based models, are these the future for medical image segmentation? They basically saw a bunch of different buzzwords that were coming out about different papers over the last year-ish and was just wondering if CNNs are essentially legacy at this point and outdated for neuroimaging.
CNNs have very good, very practical inductive bias for the kind of spatial data in MRIs and CT and any kind of spatial data with locality. So, and don't confuse publication fads in academia where you have to pretend and reinvent that you're doing novel things. That's why people don't cite previous research. It's kind of rules of the game with practical applicability. Yes, CNNs will increasingly become impossible to publish because, well, we know about CNNs, but CNNs will be useful. But neural networks were impossible to publish starting from the 90s and, for 20 years. Yet
Mhm.
engineers were using heavily neural networks as tools for work, like for prediction. Yes, in computer science and machine learning field, you wouldn't be able to publish on CNN or a neural network because it doesn't work. Everyone
Yeah.
knows it doesn't work. That's it. And so the same about CNN. So and other the world model approaches. They again, we don't know. CNNs are still more efficient. And Lee Kuhn, even one of the authors of this joint embedding approach, JEPA, published a paper with collaborators where they demonstrated that you can apply the same scaling laws as transformers. If you blow up CNN, it will become as smart as a transformer of
Yeah.
or even better. So think, okay, an older me speaking, an unsolicited advice. Don't go from the methods, go from the problem.
Mm.
So see what problems you need to solve or see what you're trying to do. And whatever methods are solving this problem better, just use them. Don't like it doesn't matter if they're
State of
the
the
most
art or have
popular
some kind of
or less
buzzword.
popular and things like that. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Maybe that kind of brings me to one of my favorite questions I always like to ask guests. If you had to start right now your research path again, what direction would you choose or what topics interest you right now?
Hmm. I don't know. It's very hard. It's like I'm because I'm an optimist, right? I'm in the best of the possible worlds. But this I would spend more time on dynamical systems and pay more attention to stuff like at the time. Oh well, you mean studying right now or studying back then, but taking a different path?
Either works. It's always just interesting to hear what sort of this rethinking of sort of a research path might be, or like what interests you currently, or just gives the students an idea of like, this could be a fun topic to kind of jump into if
Fun
they're
topic is complexity theory, actually.
Mhm,
The emergence I think this complex systems
mhm.
are still not well understood, and we're still in kind of a phlogiston times for complex systems. But that's I think that's how our world works. It's just we don't yet have a concrete thread to follow and pull at it. If I was starting again, I think neural networks as an engineering piece and complex systems with dynamical systems are underexplored. Even in our brains,
Mhm.
we're talking about locality in the brains, but there is also traveling wave phenomena. So
Yeah.
like neurons are like they're just the transistors, but the software that is running upon them, like the emergent phenomena of sorts, that's what's interesting. And I guess I would go more into that direction. And I'm interested. I have those books right here, four of them, a collection of papers and I don't know when I will get to them.
Hey, you'll there'll be a holiday at some point, right?
I don't know. This Christmas, I was doing something for Brain Shop instead. But yes, I would.
You just gotta do another class of Milan based on the complexity theory, and that'll get
Yes,
your read done.
complexity theory. I think doesn't. I mean, it's popular, but it needs more work, and I think it is promising for science, for
Mm,
more philosophical of understanding of what are the entities, right? I think we're carving the world incorrectly in that
mm.
sense. Like
Yeah.
that's why I'm mentioning phlogiston. It's like yeah, it's just like we're carving the world slightly incorrectly, even though physicists think they solved everything. But
Yeah, Penrose always changes his mind here and
yeah,
there, so don't worry about that. I think I just saw that he had a new theory on dimensionality or something that the uh, Biggs telescope in space is, reading different things about the start of the universe and different things of that nature. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's good. An alive field needs to change, right,
Mhm.
and develop. So.
Great. Is there a question on the sheet? I know we still have about 10 minutes. Is there a question on the sheet that I've not gotten to yet that interests you or sparked your curiosity at all?
Um, there were some interesting interpretability questions, like a trade-off between interpretability and accuracy. And
Mhm.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this, and it's more of a cautionary kind of discussion. The tale of looking for the keys under the street light because you can't see anywhere else, and so
Oh.
a person is looking for something under the street light at night. And what are you doing? I'm looking for my keys. Where did you drop
Mhm.
them? Or somewhere there. But why are you looking here? Well, because I can see here and I cannot see there. It's like that. That's what we're mostly doing, and that's question about JEPA and things like that. It's it's we're doing what is popular rather than what is important, and
Mm.
we're doing what is measurable. Like why people want to be rich, right? People actually want to be useful for society and want to be valued members of society, but money is a easy metric to demonstrate, look, I'm valuable, this is my value, right?
Mhm.
And the same with accuracy of models. It's easy to measure and my model is more accurate, but
Mhm.
I use and well, then you gaming the numbers because okay, what people usually do, they build a predictive model that predicts something based on a window of signal, say fMRI.
Hmm.
And they put the same subject in the train and test set, and they don't tell about that. So they, instead of stratifying by subjects, people just carve the windows, mix them, and separate. But
Yeah.
then you're inflating your numbers, and well, because it pays to inflate, my model is better. So we demonstrated with my student who's right here behind the door there. We demonstrated that even simple, super simple model, like you don't need to have a big model to achieve your goal. But
Hmm.
zeitgeist is no, big models work, and that's why everyone is publishing big models because,
Yeah.
well, because
Or
you get less criticism. But what we showed is logistic regression model is among the best if you have good features. And by the way,
Mhm.
in your practice, when you're solving a problem, if you know which features are good predictors, then classical machine learning is much better than deep learning. That's
Mhm.
it's small, it's efficient, and it will give you guarantees and quality. But if you don't know what the features are, if your data is messy and all you want to do is just to throw the data at it, then we also demonstrated that a tiny, tiny deep learning model, just a machine, a multi-layer perceptron applied in a weird way, gives the highest accuracy, like beats transformers and everything. And then, but well, the point is not to say use small models. The
Yeah.
point is to say that prediction as a signal is only a proxy if you're doing something else. But by itself, maximizing the prediction accuracy is not that useful, I guess, in research. So we're advocating for creating models. If deep learning models can be highly predictive from the data that we don't understand, back to mental disorders diagnosed by behavior. So our labels for mental disorders come from doctors who didn't look at MRI, didn't look at fMRI. They just looked at behavior of the patients. But if the model learns to map this diagnostic labels that came from behavior, but the model guesses them correctly from the data, then the model learns something about the data. So and then this signal about the prediction signal becomes a proxy of how good we can learn from the model. What is the model looking at? What are the biomarkers? What like so this deep learning models as exploration tools. That's I think is an interesting. It's like well, just a little bit philosophical talking about intelligence. If it there's other intelligences that you can learn from, or
Yeah.
yeah, so that's an interesting direction. That there was a question that I'm addressing, or a set of questions. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know if
Yeah.
we
No,
need.
I appreciate it. Yeah, because thinking even I've worked a lot with the ADNI data set, which is one of the premier Alzheimer's data sets for fMRI data. And when you go through survey papers or different things, people are trying to get to 99% accuracy and above, and all of this hoo-ha, and it just never feels correct because they are gaming the system and trying to
Yeah,
get that
but
0.1% better
but
performance
we
or
do
the
that. We
increment.
do that because
That's what
the
gets
light is
published, and
there.
that's how you
It's
get,
easy.
yeah.
Yeah. So be
Um,
careful again. It's like what is your question? If you want to game the system, be honest with yourself. I'm gaming the system, but
Yeah, because
don't
I
fool
mean,
yourself.
it comes back to a couple of the different questions on the list that we're asking about, like how close we are to solving Alzheimer's, or the kind of like ambiguous questions that, we still are at the foundational models, and big claims are always being made, and of course to sell something, but I think we still have a longer way to go.
Yeah, I agree with that. But there was a question about how soon we're gonna have AGI. It's a funny question that I don't have an answer to. But
Yeah.
I think I thought about a little thing, a fun thing to end this all. It's like possibly our planet or our solar system is already in beyond the horizon of a black hole, right? But we don't feel it. It's from our perspective, we don't know about it. We're just getting sucked to the center. So
Dragon.
with
Mhm.
AGI, I think it's inevitable. but it's very hard to say where we are. But I think maybe Stanislav Lem, an author from the 60s, sci-fi god, actually, if you haven't read him, has a joke that evolution made humans or in order to invent the wheel. Basically, it couldn't make the wheel. So I think evolution made humans to make AGI, to make the next kind of
The next thing.
creatures.
Hmm.
But this is on.
Yeah, we can get into sci-fi theory and engineers and all of the other things.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
we had a question in the chat.
Mhm.
Um, we from Jamie, how do you think current AI relies too much on correlation instead of causation in brain research? And do you think it can be addressed in any way? Um, I don't know.
We're trying to address that explicitly by building causal models and by building we call it architected interpretability, when instead of trying to analyze the model, so archinterp, right? You've heard of mechaninterp, mechanistic interpretability, where you have a black box
Hmm.
and you disassemble it and look at every neuron, something what neuroscience doing. But we're trying to do archinterp, where you build in an interpretable model that you can intervene on, and then once you can intervene on, you can establish causality on top of what you're doing after the model is trained via interventions. So that's an interesting approach. But on the other hand, those large models, like there is a lot of large language models, there is a lot of knowledge in our language. Our language by itself is a complex system that has evolved, and so the models are reflecting this. And what we already know causally in our language, the models regurgitating to us. For example, what do we mean that moon causes tides, right? We like what the causes part is tricky because we never done an experiment. We actually mean that if we reach out and grab the moon, wiggle it around, then Earth's
Yeah.
crust will wiggle around. But we never done an experiment, and yet we know this for a fact. So causation versus correlation, you do not always need to actually do experiments to make intervention, to learn about some causal links via proxy and via different observations. So observational, this is causal learning, the field that originated in the early 90s, late 80s, that from observational data, you can establish some causal facts, or like not all of them. So I'm hoping that we can, those large models can at least drift to that realm where some causality is correlationally established, but like from correlational data, from observation data, and some is uncertain and requires experiments. But that's how we do that too. Think of visual illusions when you enter a dimly lighted room.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
you change your position once you established, oh, it must be an illusion. You make an intervention only after, but you try to analyze what's going on first from just observational data.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
we
know if
are at the top of the hour, Sergey. I don't
yeah.
know if you wanted to leave the students with any piece of advice or any word of wisdom that you like to tell your students at all, but we can end with there. And I want to thank you for your time on this day. I know you're busy and you're going to be busy the rest of the month, so thank you very much for finding
Yeah,
time.
thanks for having me here. I hope my answers are interesting, at least if not helpful. And students can benefit from them. I don't know. There is no universal advice. Psychology tells us people are different. The only advice we knew from ancient Greek: know thyself. It's like
Mhm.
my only advice to you is listen to yourself. What do you want? It's important to know what you want and be honest with yourself, and like it's like because we all so different, there is no universal advice.
Well, that I think is just a nice little button for us. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday, Sergey. I'm going
Thank
to go
you.
ahead and stop the recording here. Yeah, everybody in the chat, thank you for showing up today. I hope those are listening on the recording enjoyed the conversation as well, and we'll have a couple other of these this semester. But again, thank you Sergey, I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.